Well, hello and welcome to Ask the Rev Wednesdays. I'm Marshall Brown, Senior Pastor here at Grace Presbyterian Church. And this is Ask the Rev Wednesdays, where you ask your questions and I do my best to answer them biblically and theologically. And this week's question regards the Lord's Supper or communion or the Eucharist, depending on your tradition. And several of you asked several questions through the pandemic. Why does it matter? Why do we do it weekly historically? Why have we not done it every week during the pandemic? Very important and good questions. And so I want to address them just briefly as I can. But first, why does the Lord's Supper matter so much? Well, of course, the Lord gave it to us. It's His gift to His church. And I think the reason He gave it to us, among others, is that it engages all of our senses, our sight, our sound, our taste, our touch, our feeling. Everything is engaged because it's something tangible. Every week we come to church and we hear the Lord's Word preached, and we need that. But I think the Lord knew that it was not enough to feed us, that we needed to taste and to be reminded of His sacrifice, but not just to be reminded, to be fed so that we could go out into the world taking His good news with us for our personal application, but also for the extension of that. I love what one Scottish theologian said a couple of centuries ago, that in the Lord's Supper, we don't get a better Christ, but we get Christ better. I love that. That's such a beautiful picture that when we come to the table, we feast upon Christ. He's not present in His body here. We don't believe that. But by faith, He is spiritually present to us, and we are nourished in the gospel. And that's why, to answer the second question, why we have historically celebrated this meal every week as a church, because we don't just need to hear the gospel, we need to taste and see that it is good. And coming to the Lord's table is a way for us as a body to come together in our communion with one another to taste and see that He is good. Now, some of you have asked, why have we done it the way we have? Why have we suspended it on the whole for the most part during the pandemic? And some of that, of course, has to do with safety concerns. But of course, we did, starting in June, do a weekly service. And during the outdoor services, we've been doing it the first Sunday, the first Lord's Day of the month. And this Sunday is that Sunday. So I hope that you can come to church for a lot of reasons, but maybe preeminently to taste and to see that the Lord is good in the receiving of the Lord's Supper, of communion, this Sunday, the first Sunday of September. And very important, and looking forward to this, it's a priority for me and for our church, is that when we go back to indoor services, which will be in October, there's a video earlier in the week about that. When we come back indoors, we will again resume weekly communion, weekly Lord's Supper communion. So that'll be when we come back inside. But this Sunday, the first Sunday of September, we will celebrate the Lord's Supper together. So I hope I see you on the Lord's Day to eat with you and to feast upon Christ by faith and be nourished and reminded of His goodness, His love for us, that in the supper that He gave His body and His blood so that we might have life, forgiveness, hope, and peace. Friends, it's really good news. Taste and see that He is good. And that's Ask the Rev Wednesdays.